Hi Year 6 and welcome to Thursday's maths lesson. And today, well, this whole week we've been looking at area and perimeter. And we know that the area is the space inside a shape, and we know that actually the perimeter is the space on the outside of a shape. And today we're looking at finding the area of triangles. And people think, oh, that's really, really hard, but actually it's really, really, really easy. So let's look at this first one. We're looking at the area today inside a triangle. So that is the area inside this triangle here, and I'm going to shade it just so to remind you what area is. So this shaded in red here is the area all inside this triangle, and obviously not going outside it, apart from my colouring isn't very good. So there we can see that actually, we've looked at the area inside a triangle right there. And how are we going to find that area? Well, it's simple, isn't it, really? We've got to count up the squares. So here, well, I have 6 whole squares, don't I? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 whole squares inside the triangle. And then I have, well, I've got 4 half squares. So this is 1 half, this is 2 halves, this is 3 halves, and 4 halves. And we know that 4 half squares are going to equal, if we put them together, half, 1, 1 and a half, 2. So 2 full squares. So then if I'm doing 6 whole squares, add 2 full half squares, that's going to equal 8. So I'm going to have an area of 8 centimetres squared, aren't I? Because actually, 6 whole squares add 2 full squares is 8 centimetres squared. So our answer is going to be 8 centimetres squares, because I've added my 6 whole ones, then I've added my 4 halves, which equals 2 wholes. So 6 add 2 is 8. Then let's look at this one. Well, actually, we know that I have 3 whole squares, don't I? 1, 2, 3. And then I've actually got 3 half squares. So I've got 3 half squares, which equals 1 and a half squares. So here, what do you think my area is going to be? Well, it's actually going to be, well, 3 add 1 and a half is going to equal 4 and a half. So we could have 4.5 centimetres squared, or we could have 4.5 centimetres squared. And then finally, well, actually, if we're looking at this one, I've got to try and find the area of this triangle, okay? And so actually, I know that here I have 1, 2, 3, 4. If I rub that out, I know that here I have quite a few not even half squares. They're like tiny little squares, these ones here, aren't they? And I don't have too many full squares. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change this to here. That's going to be a full square. And then I can move it. And if I move down, I'll show you. So actually, we've chopped off this area at the top here, and we've placed it here because it's actually the same area. And then I can do 3, because this area is 1, 2, 3, times the 3 over here, and 3 times 3 equals 9 squares. So actually, sometimes we don't have to count up all the squares, but we can change where we put them. So this area has been moved to this area here, and it's made a square for us. And we've done 3 times 3 to work out the area, length times width, which equals 9. So 9 centimetres squared. Then if we have one more, well, actually, how do you think I can work out the area of this triangle? Well, what I can do is I can make a rectangle. So I'm trying to work out the area of this triangle here, aren't I? So the bit I've just shaded there, and I'm trying to do that. But actually, to work that out, what I can do is I can make a whole rectangle. And here you can see they've made a rectangle using the red line, and that red line goes all the way around. And then what we've done is actually this is 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is 4. And as they say here, well, to work out the area of the rectangle, I've done 4 times 4, which is 16 squares. Because 4 times 4 is 16. However, if you notice carefully, actually this is half of my square. This is actually, that line is going halfway down my square. So what do you think I'm going to split my 16 into? Well, I'm going to split it in half, so I'm going to divide by 2. I'm going to do 16 divide by 2 because I've worked out the area of the square is 16 and the triangle is half the square. So if I do 16 divided by 2, it gives me my answer, which is 8 squares. And that is really the basic formula to work out triangles. You've got to basically do the height. I'm going to write that down. The height times the base, or the base is the bottom bit of the triangle here, and the height is how high it goes. And then you're going to divide that by 2. Divided by 2. So sometimes we can make a square like this, work out the angle of the area of the square, and then divide that by 2 because the triangle is half of the square. What you need to do today is go away and you need to try and find out the area of all these triangles. Here you can see that actually you could just count the squares. You realise you've got half squares, so you can count up the full squares, count up the half squares, and add them together. On my next page, we know that actually we might even have half squares, and we're going to write that as 0.5, aren't we? On this page, well, we realise that actually I can move things around, can't I? So I can move this top part here to fill in the gap over here, and actually it's the same size, and then I'm just really working out the area of the square I'm marking in red here. And 3 times 3 equals 9. And then finally we say, well, actually, what could we do? Well, we could create a square. And that's what we did on the last one. We created a square, and then we worked out the area of the square, so it's 4 times 4 equals 16 squares. And what we realised was actually the triangle is half the square. And therefore we divided our answer by 2 to get the answer of 8 squares. You need to now go away and use the techniques we've looked at today to try and work out the area of triangles. Remember to upload your work to Class Dojo and do your best.